All right, so I think we're gonna go ahead then and get started. Yeah, so I know neither of you were here last week, but I did want to touch up that last week all it was just an introduction into the course, just to kind of get an introduction of that idea of minor prophets. Why are they called the minor prophets, and what exactly were they all about, who they were, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so we start off with the first one. So just to kind of brush up with a little bit from last week, because the idea of minor prophets, the reason they are called the minor prophets is because compared to the ones considered major prophets, they all were able to fit on one scroll. When the Jewish scribes were copying them down, Hosea through Malachi were all able to fit on one scroll, whereas Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel all had their own, each had their own.
Go figure, that's the only reason.
They fit on a scroll.
They all fit on one scroll. That is
that.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, because people sometimes may think, oh, the minor prophets, their message is not as right, they're not as important as the major prophets, which that is definitely not true. Because both major and minor prophets, they all had their same importance of their messages, whatever that may be. And as we're going to learn about tonight with Hosea, pretty heavy stuff that's going on here with Hosea. What he's got going on here. So, little bit about Hosea is, so the time and place that he is serving in, he is up in the northern kingdom. So if you remember your biblical history.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
But no, if you remember biblical history, so obviously the first three kings they had Saul, David, and Solomon. After Solomon, there was some issues come up, and the 10 northern tribes all separated, and the other tribes, so that they split. And there's the northern kingdom, which was the 10 tribes, and to the north, and the southern kingdom, which had Judah in the south. And that was where Jerusalem was. But yeah, so Hosea, while he mentions the southern kingdom, he's mostly preaching and teaching rather and living in the northern kingdom.
Okay.
Also, and we'll touch on this throughout the night as well, the northern kingdom in the 720s BC were the ones who were conquered by the Assyrians, and the northern kingdom was the one that just kind of fizzled out and disappeared.
Oh.
Whereas the southern kingdom of Judah, yeah, they got taken into exile into Babylon, but they were able to return home. Something that is not very common for countries that are overpowered and basically brought into exile like that.
Okay.
Could you reiterate? You said in 720 BC, the northern kingdom was conquered by the Assyrians. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. So
okay, I want to make sure I got that right.
724 to 722 BC. That's what's listed in the Lutheran Study Bible.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Hosea was written in around 740, starting around 740 BC, and kind of bleeding into that time of the Assyrians coming in.
I see.
But yeah, so that's a little bit of where Hosea is coming from. And so the king that is there up in the north, he is Jeroboam II, King Jeroboam II. And not a very nice guy. Jeroboam I, basically the entire reason that the kingdom split, because he has brought a lot of idol worship And that's
Mm.
something that else that we're going to be talking about throughout the night with Hosea as well. But yeah, there was plenty of idol worship, especially of Baal and Asherah. Yeah, of course, we hear like of Elijah and the prophets of Baal and all that sort of thing. But yeah, so that's a lot of what's going on in the north is idol worship. And there's a reason that there is judgment that is prevalent in the messages of Hosea. So with all this, we know all of our history there. Do we know much about Hosea's background? No. No. We really don't. We do know right away in verse 1 of chapter 1 that he is the son of Beri. Again, we don't know who that is. We're not exactly sure of the background, like what kind of family life Hosea might have come from. Yeah, so, but like I said, right away in verse 1 of chapter 1, the word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. That was the names for both of the two kingdoms. Israel was in the north, Judah was in the south. So when we talk about Israel tonight, we're really going to be referring to those tribes, the northern kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah, so and then I already talked about what has happened in history of Israel up to this point. That's when I mentioned about the kingdom splitting. So the northern kingdom and then the southern kingdom. Like I said, he references the southern kingdom, especially right off the bat there, listing all the kings that have gone through of Judah, but really his main focus is Israel, the northern kingdom, because of what they're doing. So any questions or comments about history leading up to this point with Hosea?
Oh, that's good.
That's good with me.
All right. Yeah, so one way, this was in the People's Commentary that I have on Hosea. There are two main ways that Hosea can be broken up. So chapters 1 through 3 mainly focus on Hosea's life.
Was that life or wife?
Life
Life.
with an L.
Fine.
Yep. Well, I mean, it definitely deals with his wife, but we'll get there in just a minute. But as we will see. But yeah, so basically the first 3 chapters deal with his marriage to Gomer and the picture of the Lord's faithful love for unfaithful Israel. Like I said, that comes from my People's Commentary. While chapters 4 through 14 focus on Hosea's message. Again, coming from the commentary, a call to repentance in view of the coming judgment is how 4 through 14 is summed up. Yeah, like I said, in the Lutheran Study Bible, they have an outline that's a little bit more, I don't want to say simplified, but it's more divided up rather than just those 2 chunks that I've got. But I want to put that there just kind of to show the 2 focuses that are there, because normally when people think of Hosea, they mainly just think of the first 3 chapters of what all happened, and they don't necessarily focus on the latter part of the book. Which, by the way, Hosea is the longest book of the Minor Prophets.
Really? Go figure.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, because there are, obviously, like I've been saying, 14 chapters in Hosea. But then in Joel has 3 chapters. Nahum has 3 chapters as well. you can kind of finger through and see how many are in, but yeah. So it's amazing that with 14 chapters, they were still able to fit all of the other rest of the minor prophets all on the rest of the scroll. The joys of writing. Yeah, so then we gotta talk about here. And like I said, this is something that is very famous, famous, however you want to phrase it, with Hosea, is what Yahweh tells Hosea to do. So if you have your Bibles open to Hosea chapter 1, you can look along with me as I read from starting with verse 2. When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go take to yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord." So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. I am sure that is not how you pronounce that, but I did the best I could.
That's okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, so the seemingly outrageous thing that Hosea is told to do by God, marry someone who is not going to be faithful to him. There are some who say that she is a prostitute. Others say, no, she's not a prostitute. She's just someone who has inclinations that would lead her to committing adultery against Hosea.
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly where I would necessarily put it, but I'm probably leaning a little more towards she would actually be a prostitute. But regardless of it, this is a completely outrageous, seemingly outrageous in our human sinful understanding here of
Not
why.
your normal marriage.
Exactly, yeah. Very, very true.
And I'm surprised God, told me to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh.
It's very surprising for especially first time readers. They would think, why would Yahweh, the God of their forefathers, who brought their people out of Egypt, got them into the promised land, all of that, now is telling one of his own prophets to marry a wife of such disgrace like Gomer.
Yeah.
But of course, this is all part of his plan and how he would get the people to see what exactly they are doing wrong. And that'll be alluded to as we go throughout here.
Okay.
Okay.
I know it doesn't seem quite right that he would make a prophet pay for it in that regard, but yeah, so not only, like I say here, is Hosea not having a lot of luck with his spouse, but his children have unfortunate names and meanings. So, yep, and so Yahweh said to him, I'm reading from verse 4 of chapter 1, Gomer bore Hosea a son. Call his name Jezreel, for in just a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. And on that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. She conceived again and bore a daughter. And the Lord said to him, call her name No Mercy, or again from the commentary I got Lo Rahama, which means no mercy. For I will no more have mercy on the house of Israel to forgive them at all. But I will have mercy on the house of Judah, and I will save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them by bow or by sword or by war or by horses or by horsemen. When she had weaned No Mercy, she conceived and bore a son. The Lord said, call his name Not My People. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. Ouch. Ouch. For Yahweh to say that about a group of folks like that, say, not my people. You know you done something.
Yeah, slap in the face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. Big time. Yeah, like I said, the name given in the Hebrew that I read here is Lo Ruhama, which is not loved, or in the ESV translation, no mercy. So basically saying Yahweh's time for grace for this nation is up. The time's up. It's that your strikes are gone, basically. Your warnings are
Got
gone.
it. Yeah.
And then the second son that Gomer bears for Hosea, Lo Ami, or not my people. And by the people's idolatry and disobedience, they can no longer be considered the people of Yahweh.
Mm.
Yeah, and the first son, Jezreel, he is named for a city north of Mount Gilboa, where Jeroboam's great-grandfather destroyed Judah's king, Ahab's family. And this means that Israel, again, talking about the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, Israel, will be destroyed there. Again, looking to the coming judgment, to the disbanding of the northern kingdom.
Mhm.
Disbanding of the Northern Kingdom.
Correct.
Banning.
Yeah, completely wiping them out. Because while Judah in the south, if you remember, they are able to go home and rebuild the temple and all that. That's where Jerusalem is and all that. The northern kingdom, you never hear from them again.
Oh, okay.
Which is usually the common practice when a larger country takes over and conquers a country and takes them off into exile and destroys things. What happens in Judah is not the norm of them being able to return home and build back up again. Usually it's what happens to the northern kingdom of being wiped out pretty much. I mean, some folks are able to stick around, but it's not how it was previous to the Assyrians coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, so notice how I kind of alluded to this a couple questions down here, but I just want to bring it up now. Notice kind of the style change that occurs throughout this book, mainly for this early section of the book. And because we kind of get more of a narrative right here in chapter 1, but then look in chapter 2, and then once we cross over into chapter 4 and following, it's kind of more that Hebrew poetry kind of style. Hebrew poetry is not the same as English poetry. I will give that disclaimer there. There's nothing in there that rhymes or anything like that. It's very different from poetry that we think of nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's that style that Hosea has chosen put in there. But yeah, like I said, not. And then there's some like chapter 3 where it's a little bit more back into more of a narrative style.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in chapter 2, just kind of reading off with that, say to your brothers, you are my people, and to your sisters, you have received mercy. Plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband, that she put away her whoring from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked and make her as in the day she was born, and make her like a wilderness, and make her like a parched land, and kill her with thirst. Upon her children also I will have no mercy, because they are children of whoredom, and etc. and so forth. So very harsh tones that are coming here from Hosea, but yeah, so you kind of have to imagine the household for Hosea with his family. Yeah, and so basically kind of what's going on here is that in this early part, let me backtrack for a second. With all of this going on, So obviously Hosea is ordered by God to take on this seemingly prostitute of a woman for a wife. This is the way that basically is what's happening in Israel, in the northern kingdom right now, is the people of Israel, of this kingdom, is adulterous in their relationship with Yahweh, and the fact that they are worshiping all these other idols. That's what's being represented here in this marriage that Hosea is having to be put through.
Okay.
So it's much more than God putting his prophet through all of this. And then in chapter 3, something pretty interesting, for lack of maybe a better word, chapter 3, what does Yahweh tell Hosea to do?
Redeems his wife.
Yep. Yeah, so basically brings her back in.
Oh.
Huh.
Yeah. Pretty surprising, especially in our minds of, well, she did this against him, and yet he is supposed to bring her back in and accept her as his wife, even though in chapter 2, through all of that, basically it said that Hosea eventually divorced her or separated from her, and now he's supposed to bring her back. Again, this is all talking about what's going on with Israel and their relationship with Yahweh. Because all of this adulterous behavior, the idol worshiping that the people are doing, and not worshiping the one true God, then Yahweh will wipe them out and cut them off, not wipe them out, but cut them off in that whole thing with the Assyrians coming in and wiping them out. But they're not completely left in the lurch, that they will eventually be brought in again. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I was not just rambling there.
So it's more of a comparison, what Hosea is going through and what God is doing to Israel.
Basically, yeah. There are some scholars that are even suggest that maybe this whole thing with Hosea is like a vision or a metaphor, and that it actually did not happen. I would not jump on board with that. I'm not okay with that idea, just because, like, if it was just a vision of all that, then what exactly would that necessarily mean for, the warnings that he has for the Northern Kingdom?
Yeah. Okay.
Sue, say your comparison again. What God's doing
What God's doing to Israel is what Hosea is going through with his wife.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because
story.
yes, with Hosea's wife, with Gomer cheating on Hosea frequently and causing all of that strife, the people of Israel of the northern kingdom is essentially cheating on Yahweh with all their idol worshiping.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's the similarity that's happening here, and that's what's being showed. And like I say here up at the top, God's faithfulness to the unfaithful. That's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so then, like I said, chapter 4, starting out here. So something that Sue and I were discussing previously before you hopped on, Debbie. If you would like to, before we begin each week, you feel like you would like to read the book that we're looking at beforehand, feel free.
Okay.
It's not a requirement. But I will point out that chapters 4, 5, and 6, especially here, well, through 7, just for a good amount of it, there's, well, and this will answer this question down here. So this section, chapters 4 through 14, is full of law and gospel messages. So good old Lutherans, we like our law and gospel. We like our law and gospel distinction. And that's what's going on here with chapters 4 through 14.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Well, right off the bat with chapter 4, hear the word of the Lord, O children of Israel, for the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. There is no faithfulness or steadfast love, and no knowledge of God in the land. There is swearing, lying, murder, stealing, and committing adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed.
Sounds like us now.
Yeah.
Yep, you are not wrong. Yep, we are still in a sinful world that
Yeah.
is very much full of these things.
Yes.
Therefore the land mourns, and all who dwell in it languish, and also the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens, and even the fish of the sea are taken away. Yet let no one contend, and let none accuse. But with you is my contention, O priest. You shall stumble by day, the prophet also shall stumble with you by night, and I will destroy your mother. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest to me. And since you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children.
Mm.
The more they increase, the more they sinned against me. I will change their glory into shame. They feed on the sin of my people. They are greedy for their iniquity. And it shall be like people, like priests. I will punish them for their ways and repay them for their deeds. They shall eat but not be satisfied. They shall play the whore but not multiply. Because they have forsaken the Lord to cherish whoredom, wine, and new wine, which take away the understanding. And I will pause there. So, like I said, throughout all this, Hosea is saying, hey, this is what's going on here. This is all going on, and this judgment is coming. Like, you're not going to be able to get away from it. This is seeped into, I almost want to say, into your blood, if we really want to go that far, which
Yeah.
we're all sinners, even from birth, of course, conception. But just all the wickedness that is happening in the Northern Kingdom, they definitely have not found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. Let's just
Yeah.
put it that way.
Nope.
And
Instead of giving themselves to the Lord, they gave themselves to prostitution.
absolutely, yep, that is very correct.
Mhm.
But yeah, and one thing I will note on really quick here, I know I kind of read the law statement, but I promise there is gospel in there. Like I said, you just have to keep reading on with that. One thing that I noticed with, as we were going through all this, the name Ephraim, Ephraim, I'm looking especially in chapter 9. It's kind of where that starts. So this is actually the name of one of the tribes that are up there in the Northern Kingdom.
One of the what?
One of the tribes
Tribes. Okay.
that's up there in the Northern Kingdom. So he's addressing them directly, while also talking of people of Israel, the Northern Kingdom as a whole.
Okay.
And one last thing, Hosea himself, interestingly enough, his name means salvation.
Ah,
Yeah. The fact that his name means salvation, and yet he's the one who has to preach all this doom and gloom about what's going to happen. to this area that he's preaching to. But of course, with the gospel messages that are in there as well, he's alluding to the fact that there will be salvation, maybe not necessarily in the earthly sense from their captors that will eventually come in the form of the Assyrians.
Mhm.
But of course, what will happen in Judah, in Jerusalem, many centuries later. All right, so any last questions or comments about Hosea?
Nope, not
This
that
is
I
a
can
lot.
think of.
This is a lot deeper than I thought.
It is very deep.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, and I encourage both of you to read through the entire book of Hosea. It's gonna
Definitely.
be a little bit of a challenge just because of how deep and how heavy he gets. But I would recommend that you both read through it
Okay.
just to kind of get that full picture.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. But yeah, so like I said, Hosea is the first one listed. That does not necessarily mean that he was the first one to write anything of the
Mhm.
minor prophets. Like I said, he's probably just put in the first of the minor prophets because he's the longest.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will hope to at some point in the weekend or early next week, it's a zoo, to be able to get the video from last week and then trying to get tonight's video up,
Okay, that'd be good.
just so everybody can stay up to date as best they can.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thanks, Sarah.
You are
Thanks,
very welcome.
Sarah.
My pleasure. God be with you both.
Have a
All
good night.
right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.